Alhamdulillah, wa salam ala wa rasulullah. Welcome to the last class for tonight. And this is our class on the lawful and the unlawful. And all of the classes that I'm teaching, they work together. They go hand in hand with one another. We're learning about the importance of allegiance in Islam and how to maintain that Muslim identity, even if you're surrounded or living in an environment that consists of mostly non-Muslims. Okay, we have the example from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions as to how to handle ourselves in stressful situations or challenging situations. And also, in addition, it's important that when we do come together as Muslims in our environment, there are certain rules and guidelines that we have to uphold with each other. Yesterday in this class, we spoke about how Allah sent down Surah Hujurat. And in this chapter of the Quran, Allah speaks about the rights that we owe to one another and the behaviors that we should exhibit whenever we come in contact with each other. We talked about how there's no spying on each other, how we should not be suspicious of one another unless a person gives you reason or proves himself to be dishonest or untrustworthy. Then we're not supposed to be suspicious of that person. We're not supposed to go around slandering that person's character or honor, because honor and life and property are sacred amongst us as Muslims. That's what we talked about yesterday. We went over the lawful and the unlawful in regards to that. Well, today, on the flip side of being suspicious and slander, we're going to speak about backbiting. And I get a lot of questions. In fact, just yesterday, Friday, for the Islam Q&A show that I do, I had a question about backbiting. Are there exceptions? And what are those exceptions, if there are any, to this disease? Because that's what backbiting is. It's a disease, because once you start it, it's hard to stop it. And we're all capable of it, because as human beings, we all have a jinn assigned to our hearts. And that jinn knows our strengths. That jinn knows our weaknesses. And he'll do everything within his power to push us to transgress a law in some way, with either his laws or our behavior or something. So I want everybody to pay attention, because there will be a quiz after today's lesson as well. Let's put the PowerPoint up on the screen so we can learn. Wait a minute. Oh, my PowerPoint, here it is. We can learn about backbiting and gossip. Give me a second here. Yeah, and all of this goes into the category of social relationships. Social relationships. As Muslims, Allah has outlined and defined for us what our social, or how our social relationships should be with one another. Okay? Just like this picture here. Women and men should not be alone together, not even to learn the Quran. Okay? The woman should be behind a screen, a curtain, a door, or something. Okay? Such as I'm doing. I'm behind my computer, which is my screen. That is my door. That is my curtain. And all you can see is the upper body. You will not, inshallah, see me standing up on camera so you can see my woman parts. All you can see is the upper part, head and shoulder. 1, 2, 3. Remember that old crime? That old, what was it? Head and shoulders, baby. 1, 2, 3. That's it. It ain't no shoulders, hips. Nope. We don't do the shoulders, hips. And we don't do the hip and knee. It's just head and shoulders on this camera. That keeps away the fitna. We're not together. You don't see me. I don't see you. And if you can't handle the head and shoulder, then you do what Allah said. Lower your gaze and just listen to the sound. Or keep your gaze open like this brother is doing and look at the computer screen, because I'm going to be using PowerPoint. Okay? So we're going to speak about how Allah has added another thing. Not just that he tell us to not be suspicious of one another, but in that same verse, he also speaks about backbiting. Backbiting. And this is the 6th evil prohibition in the verses that we cited yesterday. It's called riba in Arabic. Riba. That's a ghain. And that's hard for us to pronounce. Riba. 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 That's backbiting. Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning, this is Surah Hujurat, and do not backbite one another. That's riba. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when these verses were sent down, particularly this one, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to drive home the meaning of backbiting to his companions. And the way he did that is by asking them questions. So he asked them, what do you know backbiting to be? Or what do you think backbiting is? And they said, you know best. You and Allah knows best, because they didn't want to give the wrong answer. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained. He said, backbiting is saying something about your brother or sister in Islam, which he or she would dislike. In other words, to say something about another Muslim that they wouldn't like for you to say about them. So one of the companions said, well, what if what I'm saying about the person is true? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if what you are saying about him or her is true, then it's backbiting. But if what you are saying about that person is not true, then you have slandered him. And remember, we talked about slander yesterday. What is the difference between backbiting and slander? Backbiting is to say something about a person behind their back that they would not like for you to say, and what you've said is the truth. So say, for example, Layla has a big nose. You know that I'm self-conscious about my nose, and I don't like you to refer to my nose as being big. So one day you're sitting with other sisters and they ask, how's Layla doing? And you say, oh, she's still worried about her big nose. You've just backbit me, because you know I don't want you to mention my big nose. It's something I wouldn't want you to say. And it's the truth. But say, for example, you said, subhanallah, Layla not only has a big nose, but she got a big fat lips, and her lips got holes in them from her putting piercings in them too. And this is not true. So now you've slandered me, because you said something that I would not have liked you to say, and what you said was the truth. That is slander. Do you guys recognize the difference? And this often happens with us as human beings, because remember, Allah tells us in the Quran that we're criminal by nature. What does that mean? That means that as humans, we are attracted to the things that are bad for us. We are attracted to the things that are dirty. And if a person dislikes someone, we're going to look for faults in how that person looks. We're going to look for faults in their behavior, their family. Say, for example, especially with women, we women suffer with jealousy. Say you're jealous of Layla. You're jealous because Layla is 100 years old, but she looks better than you. So what you going to do? It's just how we are. We're going to try to, I don't like, she ain't really pretty. Look at her nose. Look at her mouth. Oh, she too light. That's just how we do. We want to try to bring a person down, demean a person to make them worse than what they are out of our jealousy or our own insecurities even. This is just the nature of the human being. This is one of the jihad nafs that we have to constantly engage in. And even the Prophet's companions had a problem with that, especially Aisha, radiallahu anha. We cover her story all the time here. And she's one of my role models. Aisha is the perfect role model for us because we watched her by reading her story, learning about her. We see her grow from a child to an adult woman. We see her go through her child insecurities, her jealousy, and then she develops into this strong, magnetic, secure, confident woman. And many of us go through that same type of growth. Well, Aisha, radiallahu anha, used to suffer with jealousy really bad because she married the Prophet when she was 6. She moved in and started fulfilling her obligations as a wife when she was 9. And he married other wives after her, beautiful women too. Okay, so she was very insecure and very jealous. And one wife in particular that she was really jealous of was Safiya, radiallahu anha, because Safiya was the only wife that the Prophet married that was not Arabic. She was Hebrew. She was of Hebrew background. Okay, she converted to Islam before she married the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when the Prophet brought her to brought her back to Medina, and she waited in her for her home to be built, Aisha stole a look at her, and she was, oh my God, jealous. She said Safiya was so beautiful. She was extremely beautiful. So of course, rather than admit how beautiful this woman was, what did Aisha do? She started to find fault with her. She started to put her down because she was a Jew. And then she made fun of her because of her height. So we have the hadith where Aisha tells us that she said to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I saw your wife. I saw your new wife, Safiya. And can't you see that she is such and such? She was talking about how short she was. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, oh Aisha, you have spoken words that if they were mixed with the water in the ocean, they would turn the water black. He said, you have backbit your sister. You said about her something that she would not have liked for you to say. So it's just normal. And of course, he corrected her on that. He knew it was her jealousy that drove her to that. That's how we women roll. We see a woman more intelligent than us. We meet a woman more beautiful than us. We meet a woman that's of a higher status than us. We're going to try to demean her, especially to a husband that we think is interested in her. Okay. So that's backbiting, to say something about a person in their absence that person would not like for you to say. And it's so easy for us to fall into that game mode. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the majority of the people in hell will be there because of failure to control their tongue. because the human nature is criminal. We suffer with insecurity, jealousy, bad anger issues, and all of that. Okay? So backbiting is a bad characteristic, and people who engage in it are people who are not achievers, or they view themselves to be less than the one they're talking about. And I want the children here, the young kids at my website, the girls on my website, to ponder that. Don't be concerned that the people are talking about you. It's when they stop talking about you that you need to worry. As long as the people are talking about you behind your back, that means that you must be better than them. You must intimidate them. They must wish to be like you. That's the only reason why they're talking about you so badly. They want you to tear you down to their level so they can feel better than you. So long as they talk about you, that's a good sign that you must be doing something right. It's when they stop talking about you, when you don't hear nobody saying anything bad, that's when you need to question yourself. That's when you need to do some self-evaluation and see, have you assimilated? In other words, have you become like them? Did you lose that distinctiveness that put you over them? Okay? Because people who backbite are people who are insecure and who are not achievers. And they use backbiting as a tool of destruction. So don't be intimidated by it. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. Remember that saying. However, guys, there's something that we, wait a minute, before I talk about that, also to show how bad backbiting is, listen to what Allah says about it in the interpretation, the meaning. Do not backbite one another. Would any of you want to eat the flesh of his dead brother? You would hate it. That's the punishment. Remember, we talked about how there are some sins that are so bad that Allah has detailed to us the punishment. And this is one of them. He says that for those of us who backbite others in this world, you will be put into the hellfire and you will eat the dead flesh that comes off the skin of the people in hell. Would you want to eat that? You would hate it. So the next time you're tempted to say something about a person that person would not like, think about the punishment. Remember, consequences. The consequences for everything that we do. Okay? Listen to what Ibn Masud, radiyallahu anhu, tells us. He said, one day we were sitting with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a man stood up and walked away. Another person began to speak badly about him. And the Prophet stopped him and said, clean your teeth. And the man said, what? I don't have to clean my teeth. I didn't eat any meat. I shouldn't have anything in my teeth. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you have eaten your brother's flesh. And this hadith is authentic. And also we have another hadith where one of the companions says, we were sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the wind blew and we could smell a bad odor. And the Prophet said, do you know what that smell is? He said, that is the smell of the people who backbite the believers. Subhanallah. So backbiting is a horrific sin. It's just as bad as slander and spying on other people. These are the evils, the 6 evils that we need to avoid whenever we come in contact with one another. And it's so hard for us to do because, like I said, we fall into the trap of gossip and backbiting, riba, so easily. However, there are exceptions. Remember, guys, there's exceptions to most everything. Pork becomes lawful if it's the only thing you can find to eat to save your life. Interest becomes not lawful, but interest, you can even indulge in interest if you have no other choice and it's a necessity that you can't do without and there's no alternative. Just like the pork. Well, there are exceptions to backbiting too. But the thing is, not everybody can use these exceptions. You guys understand what I'm saying? Some of these exceptions, for example, will only apply to a person of authority, not to you. You ain't nobody of authority. Some of these exceptions may apply to the imam. In other words, he's speaking about something that people in his community are doing that's haram. And rather than name the people, he can speak in a general way. But that's the imam. You ain't no imam. A teacher may know that some of her students are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So she can speak about what they're doing without naming their names. But you ain't no teacher. So I want you guys to understand there's exceptions, but not everybody falls in the category of being able to use these exceptions. But let's take a look-see at what they are. Let me put the PowerPoint back up. Wait a minute. What's going on with my paper? There it is. The first exception is the instance of a person who has been wronged by others, and he or she complains about what that person did to them. While he must speak about what others dislike, he has a right to do that to get his justice. Say, for example, your husband abuses you. He beats you up. He beats you in your face. He'll come home from work angry because his day was bad. So you need to get out of this marriage. So you call the imam and make an appointment with him. And you tell the imam, Brother Abdul beats me up. Or say, for example, your husband has anal relations with you. This is a big problem. A lot of my sisters here in these polygamy groups, they complain to me about this anal stuff that their husbands want to force upon them. And like I tell them, unless he putting a gun to your head and half killing you, choking you, strangling you, he ain't forcing you to do nothing. You're doing it because you want to. But let's just say that you married and you got a problem. Your husband wants to do that backdoor dirty action. So you go and complain about it to a person that can help, your imam or a judge or something. This is permissible. Or say, for example, you're a person like me. You own a website. You're trying to teach Islam. And a person keeps coming in here all the time cussing. So you have to ban them. But then they come back cursing and disrupting the class. You keep banning them. So you can speak out then. I can speak out and say, everybody beware of this person named Zayak, because Zayak is a troublemaker. Zayak he will come into your website and he will curse and he will disrupt the class. So that's an exception to backbiting. And I remember back in the 80s and 90s, when I first made this website in the early 2000s, oh, I had a lot of Tom Joes coming in here. I was known as the band queen. I had over 2,500 IPs banned from my server. And of course, these people slandered me. You know, oh, she bans people from seeking Islam. No, I don't. I ban people from coming in here trying to be a troublemaker, interrupting my class. And yes, I will name you. I'll tell everybody, look out for Zayak. Look out for Sarah or whoever it is. I'm just giving names, making them up. Okay? So that's an exception. That's not backbiting a person. When you're warning, you're speaking out. Rather, in this case, you're speaking out because a person has wronged you. Well, if I'm going to complain because you keep coming in my website stream, you know, I'm going to speak out against the stuff you did to me. Listen to what Allah says in the interpretation of the meaning. Allah does not like the announcing of evil in public speech unless it's by a person who has been wronged. So there's the clear evidence. And I remember back in the 2000s, I had to tell the brothers, I got a right to name you. I ain't backbiting you. I'm speaking the truth. You a troublemaker. You keep coming in my website causing problems because you got a problem. And I'm going to continue to warn the people against you until Allah takes care of you. Okay? So this is one of the exceptions. If someone does an injustice, or say it's your husband. But now let me talk about that husband part. A lot of you sisters are going through problems in your marriages. And instead of you calling someone who's in a position that can help you, you talking about it to your friend, your best friend. Girl, he came home and hit me in the head again. Girl, he came home and did this again. Now you're backbiting because the person that you're telling is not in a position that they can help you. You can complain against a person that has wronged you, but it has to be to someone of authority who can help you, not to your neighbor, not to your friends, just to get it off your chest. No, we don't get it off our chest. Does everybody understand that? So like I said, these exceptions come with conditions. But that's the first exception. Also, the second exception to backbiting. Let's say, for example, you're about to start a business. I want to open up a Starbucks. I want Amina Fresno to be my partner. But I want to know, is she a good businesswoman? I want to know if she's one of them women that'll take my money and give it to her husband. So I heard she had a business before, that she was in business with Jamila Pasha. She used to sell clothes with Pasha. So I'm going to go to Jamila Pasha and say, hey, Jamila, what's up? Can you tell me about Amina? How is she as a businesswoman? And Jamila say, girl, you don't want to do business with Fresno? Why not? Girl, she going to take that money and close out on you. Oh, really? So that's not backbiting. And by the way, I'm making all this up. I'm using names y'all familiar with so y'all can imagine it. So that's an exception to backbiting. If I want to investigate the character or the suitability of a person, and I approach someone who did business with them or who knows them, and then that's an exception. And by the way, that person is obligated to tell me the truth too. Or say, for example, someone comes to your husband saying that he wants to marry your daughter. You want to make sure that this man is a practicing Muslim. So you go to the mosque and say, you ask him, who are some of your friends? And he gives you the name of some of his friends. So you call them and you ask them, tell me about brother so-and-so. Does he pray? Does he follow the Sunnah? Is he an innovator? In that case, too, the person can be honest. That's not backbiting. And by the way, you're obligated to tell the truth about the person. You're obligated to tell the truth. If the person doesn't pray, just say, well, he's a good brother, but he's got some issues with that. And you ain't got to go into detail. He's a good brother, but he's got issues with that. Well, what about fasting? Does he fast Ramadan? He's a good brother, but he's got issues with that. That's all you got to say. You don't have to go into no details. Okay, so that's the second exception to backbiting. And what is that based on? Where's my dalil? Where we have the famous hadith of Fatima bint Qais. She wanted to get married. She had 2 marriage proposals. One from Muawiyah, who was the son of Abu Sufyan. And I forgot the other. I think the other one was Abu Dar. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ to ask him about him. And she asked, it was Abu Dar. She asked the Prophet, Abu Dar wants to marry me. And the Prophet, I believe it was him, the Prophet ﷺ said, no, he's not good to marry because he's poor. He ain't got no money. He can't take care of you. Heck, he can't even take care of himself. So how can he take care of you? And so and then she said, well, I also got a proposal from Muawiyah. The Prophet ﷺ said, yeah, Muawiyah is wealthy. He can provide and maintain you, but he don't put his stick down. In other words, he beats his wives. Muawiyah had that problem. He used to hit his wives. Okay? So, see how the Prophet told the truth. Abu Dar's a good man, but he can't do nothing for you. He ain't got no money. Muawiyah got all the money in the world, but hey, he got a heavy hand. He got a problem with hitting his women. He go around hitting his women. So now neither one of them is good. So that's the dalil, that when it comes to seeking information, investigating a person's character or their business ethics, then that's the exception to backbiting. You can tell, in fact, you're obligated to tell what you know of this person. Not in detail, but just tell what needs to be said. The third exception is in regards to speaking about a person without his knowledge if a legal opinion or religious ruling is required. Okay? In that case, then you can say what you know about that person. In other words, this person claims to be a witness to something. Okay? You need to know, can you accept what he says? Or also referring to somebody with a nickname. This brother is blind in one eye. So you say, the blind person. Nobody likes to be called blind, but if that's the only way you can identify him. So you say the brother with the blind eye, or the sister that can't walk, the sister that ain't got no teeth. This is an exception. Okay? So these are the exceptions to backbiting. And also, again, an imam or a person of authority, a daya like myself. We're teaching it. It's our job to be aware of the problems of that's going on in the Muslim Ummah. We know some of these people on our website are dealing with weed, smoking marijuana. We got to speak out against it in a general way, without naming him. And the heart is important too. Allah looks in our heart. I have to be doing it for the betterment of the community, not because I want y'all to figure out who the person is and destroy him. Okay, so this is very important. I think, yeah, this is my next slide. Yes, the general rule concerning the permissibility of speaking about a person in their absence is there has to be a need for it. And your intentions must be for the betterment of someone or something, not because you want to just hurt that person. Does everybody understand? There's a need for me to speak about people getting high. There's a need for me to speak about sisters not wearing hijab because they're not wearing it. People are using marijuana. And I'm not naming who you guys are, but if the shoe fits, wear it. And that's where people get angry at us, Daya, or they'll get mad at the imam. You know that we talking about you, but I didn't say your name. I made it general. Don't get an attitude with me for doing my job. Nobody would have known it was you if you didn't raise your hand and try to jump crump. A lot of us can't stand to hear the truth about ourselves. So we let everybody know that it was us because we want to object. You heard the old Shakespeare saying, methinks the woman protests too much. That's the problem with women. We protest too much. The woman that's protesting, she's protesting because she's the one guilty of it. But nobody would have known it was you if you hadn't opened your mouth, because I spoke in general. The imam spoke in general. The person of authority spoke in general. And our intentions was to bring good to the community. It wasn't to hurt anyone. Okay. And so also, not only does Allah tell us how horrific a sin backbiting is, not only does he tell us that there are exceptions, but also Allah tells us what to do if we are a witness to this sin. Islam decrees that if you hear another Muslim speaking about another Muslim in a bad way behind their back, and that person is not of those exceptions, then it's your job to defend the person. To defend the person. Does everybody understand that? The Prophet ﷺ said, if anyone defends his brother who is slandered, it will be his due from Allah to set him free from the hellfire. Let me share with you guys a horrific incident that occurred here at this website. Back in the early 2000s, I had more men coming here back then as students. I'll never forget, this one young brother joined my website. He started speaking very derogatorily about a famous speaker. This famous speaker is known as a Sufi. This famous speaker is known as following the Maliki method. This famous speaker is known as being anti-Sunnah. And I don't like this speaker. Nobody of the Sunnah likes this speaker because this speaker is a known, innovating Sufi. But this brother, this young brother came into my website, into my Zoom room. It wasn't Zoom. It was a different chat room there. And he got on the mic and he spoke so badly about this brother. I had to come in. I had just come home from work. I had to grab the microphone. I had to mute him. And I was placed in a situation where I had to defend. I had to defend this brother, even though I didn't like this brother. But it was not this other person's place to come in here, pretend to be a scholar, pretend to be a teacher, and start speaking in a really bad way about this person. He wasn't addressing his Sufism. He wasn't addressing his innovations. He was addressing this person in a worse way. So I had to defend this other Muslim man's honor, and then I kicked the brother out the website. And I was so angry. I'll never forget that, because I don't like that brother, but I don't dislike him on a personal level. Remember, we're supposed to love and hate for the sake of Allah, not personally. If I'm going to speak against that brother, I'm going to speak against his innovations. I'm going to speak against him saying that we can talk to dead people. I am not going to sit here and talk about his wives, talk about his children, things like that. That's his property. That's his honor. Subhanallah. So that young man put me in a bad position where I had to defend this innovator, because the brother wasn't attacking his innovations. He was attacking him on a real personal level with his wives and children. We don't do that. So, it's our job as a Muslim, when somebody starts speaking badly about a person, you're supposed to defend him, even if it's a person that you don't like. And again, if anyone defends his brother's honor in this world, Allah will shield you from the hellfire. Also, if a person does not have the courage to speak out in defense of his brother against malicious tongues, then the least you can do is leave the company until they change the verse. And this is what I used to tell my students. I don't have those kind of people here no more. I used to tell my students, if I'm not here and somebody comes in and gets on that microphone, because we didn't have moderators back in those days. They didn't invent that yet. I said, if somebody come in here and gets on that microphone, y'all leave. Don't sit there and let them engage. Because back in the early 2000s, it was nothing but a scandal-mongering slander campaign against any Muslim. We're not supposed to sit in the presence or the company of people who speak badly about the religion or badly about each other. We can't do that. We have to leave unless it's those conditions. If the imam is meeting with his board to discuss a person, or even a person like me, I'm meeting here in my website with my regular students to discuss a person, a problem that we need to deal with, that's an exception. But if it ain't no exception, we don't sit in the company of that. Again, as the law says, in the interpretation, the meaning, truly, you would then become like them. If you sat in their company, you bear the sin. You're just as guilty of the sin as they are. So, subhanallah, those are the rules and rulings that Allah has put in effect about backbiting. A lot of you sisters will come to me and say, what's the ruling on this? I hope y'all understand what a ruling is. A ruling is something that Allah said. You can't come, for example, and ask me, what's the ruling on boycotting? There's no ruling on boycotting. Allah doesn't mention anything about no boycotting. Boycotting is lawful. If that's something that you want to do, do it. That's your business. Rulings, we can't just make up rulings. All rules and guidelines and laws are made by Allah. So there isn't a ruling on everything. Most things in life are lawful. The rulings are usually in regards to those things that are unlawful. Backbiting is unlawful. That's why there's rulings on backbiting. Boycotting is not unlawful. That's why Allah doesn't mention nothing about boycotting. Does everybody understand the difference? What a ruling is? It's a ruling or guideline created by Allah, not by man. Okay. So now let's talk about gossip. Gossip is the brother of backbiting. Gossip is when you take whatever bad news that you've heard about a person and you spread it to others. This is even worse. This is the worst type of ghibah, because you can turn a whole community, a whole country against a person based on lies. The Prophet ﷺ said, the person who spreads gossip, which he overheard, will never, never, never enter paradise. This is what makes gossip the worst type of ghibah. Why? Because gossip is a sin of disbelief. Remember, I told you guys, I got a whole series I teach every year on the sins of disbelief. Just like arrogance is a sin of disbelief. Just like worship is a sin of disbelief. Just like suicide is a sin of disbelief. Gossip is a sin of disbelief too. And that's the dalil. That's your evidence. This hadith is Bukhari. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the person who spreads gossip will never enter paradise. Never. Y'all see that? You better verify it. Allah tells us before you go spreading information, you better verify it. That's what they did to Aisha, radiallahu anha. They gossiped against her. Also, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said the evilest amongst Allah's slaves are those who go around spreading gossip, dividing people who love each other apart, and desiring to defame people who are innocent. That's what they did to the Prophet's wife, Aisha, radiallahu anha. So that's the dalil of all ghibah, of slander and backbiting. The worst is gossip. And the person who dies upon that sin, if you die upon the sin of gossip, you die a kafir. You will never enter paradise. And it makes sense because you've destroyed, you've helped spread stuff to destroy, to kill another Muslim, their reputation. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, to destroy another person's reputation is the same as if you've taken a sword and cut off his neck. That's Muslim, Sahih Muslim. So if you die upon that sin, you can forget about paradise. That's why as Muslims, we have to be careful of spreading information that we haven't verified. And we're living in the days of social media. A lot of you will post stuff on your Facebook page, on your Instagram page. You don't know if that information is true or not. You done spreaded some gossip about another Muslim that you don't even know. If you're lying, that's a sin of disbelief. And ignorance is no excuse. Does everybody understand that? So y'all better be careful what y'all post up about other people on your Facebook pages and social media pages. Y'all better be careful sharing videos where Muslims are attacking other Muslims and you don't know if that information is true, because that's gossip. And this is a sin of disbelief. Subhanallah. So the Prophet also said, he is not a liar who makes peace between two people. He is not a liar who tells them something that may not be true just to bring peace. That's the exception to lying. You know, say, for example, something happens and me and Amina Fresno fall out. We mad at each other. So you want me and Amina Fresno to be back friends. So you decide to cook dinner and you invite me over to your house. And I say, is Fresno going to be there? You say, no. Why would I invite Fresno? Ain't nobody but you and me, girl. And then you call Fresno and say, Fresno, I'm going to invite you over for dinner tonight. And she say, is Nashiba going to be there? And you say, no, girl, this just you and me. Why would I invite Nashiba? So when I get there, and Amina get there, we looking at each other. This was a good thing. You are excused from that. I look at Amina. She look at me. And then we hug each other. Girl, I missed you. Girl, I missed you too, Nashiba. You know, subhanAllah, you know, that's the exception to lying if it's going to bring two Muslims together. Or to keep the peace, like the hadith, whereas the woman lied to her husband. He asked, where's our son? Is he better? Is he well? She said he's sleeping. When in reality, he had died, but she didn't want to tell him yet until he got some rest. Because she knew he was tired, you know, so there's exceptions to lying too. And we'll talk about that later. But these are the exceptions to backbiting. OK, and gossip is no exception. Anytime you get information, Allah commands us in the Quran to verify it. Verify it before we share it, even knowledge. When you learn something about the religion, before you share it with your family, before you share it with another Muslim, verify it. That's why I use PowerPoint. So you can see the hadiths, that I'm not making them up, because a lot of people make up hadiths every day. Okay? So that's backbiting and that's gossip. We have a hadith. Whereas a man, I like this hadith. A man came to Umar, radiyallahu anhu, and told him something about another person, which that person would not have liked. So Umar said, let's examine your case, because if you're lying, you are one of the people who Allah was speaking about when he said, if a wicked person brings you information, investigate it. And if you're telling the truth, then you're the person that Allah was speaking about when he said a slanderer going among the people, causing fitna. And when Umar said this, the man then said, forgive me, O leader of the believers, I'll never do it again. So the way Umar handled that situation, that's how we're supposed to handle it. When somebody comes to you with bad news, saying anything bad about another Muslim, you're supposed to verify it. If another person comes to you with information about a new way to pray or a new anything, you verify it. Where's the dalil? Before you share it with anybody. Is this clear? Remember, those companions, they taught us how to handle ourselves in all situations. We just have to learn from their teachings and then apply it to our interactions with each other. So now let's see how well you guys understood this. I'm going to give you a quiz. Everybody get ready. Just a couple of questions. Question number 1. Who can tell me the difference between backbiting and slander? Who can give me the difference between backbiting and slander? What's the difference between them? Go ahead.
Slander is to say about someone that is a lie, and backbiting is to say about a person that they would not like behind their back.
You guys agree? Mashallah. Good job, Mina. Exactly. To backbite is to say something about a person in their absence that they would not like you to say. Whereas slander is to say something about a person in their absence that they would not like you to say, and it's a lie. And which is the worst between the two? What's worse, backbiting or slander?
Backbiting.
Slander.
Okay.
You're lying.
Yeah, exactly. Slander is worse, Mina, because slander includes lying. Backbiting is the truth. Slander is the lie. They're both bad, but slander is worse. Good job. Next question. What are the conditions in which backbiting is permissible? Who can remember the conditions in which backbiting is permissible?
If someone is doing a background check when they're seeking marriage.
Okay, if someone's doing a background check for marriage or anything where they need to go into a business partnership with this person, that's one exception. Good job. What's another one?
If someone is trying to bring peace between two people.
Okay, is that backbiting or is that lying?
That's lying.
Yeah, we're not talking about lying. This is backbiting. Give me another condition for backbiting.
When someone is trying to do a business with someone else and they just want to ask regarding to that person.
You already gave that answer. That's the same answer.
Oh.
What's another one? What's another condition for backbiting that's permissible? Investigating a person's character, that's number one. What's another one? Come on, guys. It's not hard. Think. What do you women do all the time?
When you're trying to warn against someone, you're trying to, you don't say their name, but you're trying to stop them from.
You speak in general. Good job.
Don't wear a hijab. Yeah.
Okay, to warn.
Person didn't wear a hijab.
Exactly. Yeah. To warn against someone. If you're going to talk, in that case, you can mention their name. If you're warning against someone, this person is a known murderer. This person's a rapist. This person is a troublemaker on the internet. This person will take your internet out. I can say your name and everything then because I'm warning the people against you. Good job. What's the third condition? What's the third? To warn against a person? To inquire or investigate a person? What's the next one? What is it that you women do all the time? What is it that you married women do all the time, the ones that don't work and can't leave their home? Come on, guys. What's the other exception? Let me look on Facebook and YouTube. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Hold on.
To talk about your situation to a person that's in the position to help.
Exactly. If you want to complain about your situation to someone who can help you. Yes, for example, your husband is beating you in the head. So you're going to call the imam and say, Imam, I got to get out of this, man. This brother likes to beat me in the head. You know, to complain, but it has to be to a person of a position who's of authority that can help you. And what's the last condition? The last acceptance. The last exceptions to backbiting. Sabrine? Is that a clue? Catch my clue?
Writing poetry?
Writing poetry? No. Well, that could be. Yeah. But what about it? What about the writing poetry? Yeah, that's it. What about it? You can't think of a person's name, so you refer to the person by something that everybody knows her or him as. Everybody knows that Sabrine is the one who just had a stroke. So if you come and say, well, how's that sister doing? What sister? You know, the one that had the stroke. How's that sister doing? You know, the one that writes poems. How's that sister doing? You know, the one that stays by herself. You know, you're not doing it in a malicious way, but this is to identify someone that we all know that person as. Everybody understands now? That's the last exception. The blind man, you know, that brother, the one that walks with a limp. You know that sister, the one that got the big butt. Unfortunately, it's a bunch of them out there now. You know, the sister that had that butt surgery. That's an exception. Everybody got it?